You can call the meeting to order,
I will.
and then I'll say a few words, Wayne.
I'd like to call the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board to order this Thursday, April 12th. It is now 7:02 PM. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Sean Poole,
Here?
Member Lori Simpson. Please let the record show Member Lori Simpson is absent. Member Randy Stout.
Here.
Member Bod Breedlove.
Here.
My apologies. Member Phyllis Gray.
Present.
And Member Claudia Smith. Here. Thank you.
Mr. Matthau.
Thank you. I want to make a few comments. I know some of you have done rezoning before. I know some of you have not. Some comments concerning substance as well as procedure. This is a formal hearing, although you're making a decision. Your decision will be to recommend the rezoning or not recommend the rezoning. It will go before council 2 weeks from now. Having said that, with regard to substance, it's a rezoning matter. In our code, there's certain criteria. If you could hand these out to them, bring it back. The clerk's handing out the criteria in our zoning code, which you should be looking at to base your decision upon. If you have any questions concerning those questions, you can ask me, but I can't help you with your decision-making process. Okay, that's a portion of the code. Secondly, the code also provides certain conditions which may be imposed upon the applicant. Okay, and I have a list of those, and they're 2 pages long. Most likely, if there are any conditions you desire to impose upon the applicant or the applicant agrees to impose upon himself, you'll find them in the last paragraph of that list. Many of the early ones are not going to be applicable here, such as granting of an easement in the road and things like that. If you have any questions about that, let me know. In terms of process, since it is a hearing, what I'm going to request the chairman to do is first let the clerk swear in anyone that may testify. That would be staff, the applicant, and anyone in the audience that may be testifying. Okay, we can do that all at once. After that, normally we're going to call you would call the staff, ask them to go over any documents in the file. Just so you know, our rules state that once the applicant has filed the papers and they're in order, they become part of the permanent record. The applicant does not have to file any additional documents. Same applies to staff. They have documents there. They don't need to file any more documents, so they don't need to hand up the documents you already have. If they have additional documents or the applicant does, they can hand them up, and whether you want to receive them is your business. After staff gives their report, you would then call the applicant to come up, introduce himself, his connection to the corporation or LLC, and basically tell you what he's trying to do. After that, any one of the board members, including the chairman, can ask questions. You can have conversation. Okay, go back and forth. Any applicant can call any witnesses. I don't think that's going to happen here today. Maybe it will. You can call anyone else. Okay, you can cross-examine them. Same applies for staff. You can cross-examine them. And that'll pretty much be the process. So at any time, Chairman, if you have any questions, let me know.
Wonderful.
At that point in time, I'd probably have the clerk swear in any witnesses.
Great.
If you're going to be speaking, please stand and raise your right hand.
Maybe you too, go speak.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may be seated.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Before we get started, we'll do a little housekeeping. Do we have a motion or discussion regarding the minutes from the last meeting?
I make a motion we approve. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. At this time, Mr. Muse, you have the floor.
May I make your choice? It'd probably be better for the record for everybody to take the microphone.
Sure.
Take their name.
Good evening, Bill Muse from the city. We are, you have the packages, I'm assuming you've all looked at it, see what the issue is here, trying to rezone from a R2 zoning into commercial zoning. We are recommending denial of that for several reasons. It will increase traffic, it's always the age-old argument, as you're well aware. It's clearly an encroachment into a residential area. There had been discussion about property values increasing. We don't have any proof of that. We have no way of knowing that, so we discounted that. There were some properties that were rezoned on this street, the Sunglow, I believe Sunglow Street, in the past that were zoned for commercial. We really can't speak to those. We have no idea how or why that happened. Spot zoning was the case, and there's just nothing we can do about that. But that doesn't
Mr.
mean we
Mears,
have to
may I
continue.
interrupt, please? I'm so
Sorry.
sorry.
That's
Could
okay.
you move the mic over to the center a little bit?
This way, is that better?
I think so.
I
Thank you
apologize.
so much. Thank you.
Again, we can't speak to why this one piece or several pieces of property there were zoned commercial in the past, but again, that established something back then. It occurred in 2006, 2009, somewhere about that, a long time ago. I'd like to read you, we have three residential zoning districts, or areas in our code. One is R1, one is R2, which you probably all live in. One is R2, which is duplexes, probably none of you live in it. The third is R3, which is multifamily. There are probably some of you live in that. But the irony of it is or my irony anyway, is from all three of those districts, there's a paragraph that runs through them all, and I'd like to read that to you if I may. The purpose of this. The purpose, let me go to R2. Same paragraph for all three of them. The purpose for an R2 family residential zoning district is to locate an established area in the city which is suited for development and maintenance of moderately low density residential living of an urban character, to designate those uses and services appropriate for location and development within said zoning district, to establish such development standards and provisions as are necessary to ensure proper development in a moderately low density residential environment. That's kind of interesting right there. I'd like to also read to you quickly on spot zoning. Spot zoning is the application of a zoning to a specific parcel or parcel of land within a larger zoned area when the rezoning is usually at odds with the city's master plan. I have some photographs of it. Can you give up this photograph, please? We have some additional photographs to what you had, the package you had. We took some additional photographs of the area. And again, what we're arguing about here is the difference between C2 and R2 zoning, residential zoning. To me, we have a responsibility to maintain residential no matter what. We just can't, that's the backbone of our city, of our nation, of everything. So we just can't really go in and encroach into those areas. What happened is on your photographs that you have there, the first two show the zoning, I don't know if you've got that map or not, or you may have already. The second is our land use development map, which shows the zoning. All right, everybody with me?
Yep.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
As I stated initially, if these are additional documents, they'll have to be offered into evidence and accepted upon your approval. So if these are new documents.
They are new.
If they're new documents, then they're being offered after the testimony. You decide whether you want to make them a part of the package.
Thank you.
Photograph number one is taken, you probably know the city better than I do, is taken looking northwest toward the property. Clearly shows an area on the south side of the street where children are playing, catching the school bus. Second photograph actually shows the school bus arriving. Third photograph, of course, shows the school bus going down the very same street. Fourth photograph shows the residential nature of the street. It's only really one block long, I believe, a long block, but it is a very long block between two major north-south arteries. And the fifth photograph is, of course, is the area that was rezoned some time ago, much to our consternation. Well, we're recommending denial of this rezoning. I want to bring something home to you. We would recommend denial if this was on Miller Road. We'd recommend denial if it's on Sunset, if it's on Candlelight, if it's on Limit, if it's on Aquila. This is just not what we should be doing as a city. We need to move forward and protect residential development. It was zoned residential years ago by the people who had the foresight to zone it residential, and we need to keep it that way. With that, and with our recommendation, I'll answer any questions.
Yeah, I'm looking at your new pictures, okay? I just want to be clear, I'm looking at, we're talking about lot 19, lot 18, and these other lots also, or?
I think it's 12, 13, 14, 15,
Okay.
16, and 18. I don't know what happened to 17.
Okay, that's the properties we're looking at.
Right.
That's correct.
On this map, it shows 0 PUD. Is this, the second map you submitted,
Yes, sir.
is that current or future? Future land use map? So this property was future land use as a PUD. Is that correct?
That's-
It appears that way, yes.
Okay. We already have C3 on both sides of at least lot 18 on Leo Kidd Road. Is that correct?
We have it on both sides, but that's not a good comparison. That was zoned commercial north of there, and it is commercial.
Well, the Duke Energy that's across the road shows here 00R2, yet I thought it was shown as a C3 on the submittal paperwork.
I don't know.
At least submittal paperwork indicates it's a C3, so I just want to clarify whether that's R2 or C3.
The lot 19,
You're right. I see the future land
I
use
believe
is
that
for
is-
commercial.
When the packets were put together, lot 19 was C3. Upon further investigation, it appears that that lot may be R2, just that lot may be R2, with a future land use of commercial. On our future land use map that you're seeing on the second page, it shows R2 with the future land use of commercial. The properties in question are zoned residential future land use.
I say that, 0 PUD, or PUD is planned use development, can be commercial or residential.
The said lots in question,
No, I'm talking about PUD zoning.
the PUD, this was a PUD many years ago prior to 1986,
Okay.
and it had expired. So it
Gotcha.
reverts back to its
Okay, so it's
zoning of
expired
R2.
PUD.
Correct.
Okay. Why does it show as R2 here?
I'm showing PUD.
You said it expired though.
The PUD had expired on the said properties in question. Yes, it expired, so it reverts back. We're currently in the process of revamping our zoning map and the future land use map. So
I just want to make sure what I'm looking at, I understand.
Correct.
Thank you.
Well, my question to staff then would be, if the applicant has presented to us their version showing the PUD, which we understand it reverts back to a R2, how come they have it listed as the lot number 19 as a C3, which is of course, what all the board members have received, and now this new data that we have shows this is an R2? Which one's correct is my biggest concern. Because if that's the case, was the applicant misinformed from the very beginning, if that's his belief? Because if that's his belief, then we're not doing him any justice if we're changing we're receiving this now, and our information is different. Because that's a big concern of mine.
Mine as well.
So I guess that goes to staff. is what is the actual true designation of that said lot, R19, I mean, the lot number 19, and how come you guys have a different information than what the applicant has? Because that would be, as Mr. Mathis said, that would be kind of pertinent since we just received this.
We have researched, our zoning map currently states that that's C3.
Okay?
Upon me researching it a little bit further, I went in to see if there was any type of rezonings done in the past with the city clerk, to see if there's any paperwork to state that that lot that Duke Energy owns was ever reverted or changed to C3. Nothing could be found.
Oh, the age-old Port Ritchie, we
So,
can't find what we
It
have.
appears that that map, when it was done, could be error.
Was that map in our package, or was that from?
It was, so in the package that we received, and I'm sure all the board members did
We
the
all
same thing I
received.
did, the applicant has shown us that lot 19 is in fact zone C3.
Was that from our information?
That was from your information
fact,
that you
you look at
provided
this
to
sheet.
him,
This sheet shows it very clearly.
which makes a very large concern from my standpoint that the applicant is basing his information based off of information that the city provided him, which now we can't substantiate a change to back to R2, because that's gonna be the basis of comparison. Now we got R2 surrounding it two sides as opposed to now, but according to his way, he only has his own one side. Anybody else have questions or concerns about the same thing?
I just wanted to make sure I understood when I get this bewildering collection of data, get down to one statement. And
I just
that
wanna make
is-
sure that the applicant and staff are on the same page,
Agreed,
and that we as a board are on the same page.
agreed.
And I don't feel like that is the case already. You understand my concern? You see my concern? That, I mean, I understand staff's recommendation perfectly well, and I understand, fire and police's recommendation completely well. But if the applicant's already got what we perceive to be the wrong information from the very onset of this situation, that causes a problem as far as I'm concerned. Anyone else have care to elaborate, or?
Can we, put this lot 19 on hold to another day till that's verified, and we can just
it's
talk
this
about
one
the,
here.
we can talk about the other lots today?
I think we
Probably
need to
not.
treat this is
Lot
one
19 is not part
application.
of
It's contiguous, it's a contiguous
No.
rezone, correct? I mean, we can't,
No,
Can't do it partial.
Lot 19 is not part of the code.
no, but that's, the lot in question is the reason that we're having a concern.
Well, let's take 19 out of the picture. Even
Okay.
with 19 out of the picture, I see a very clear view here, which is that lot 18 fronts a commercial street.
Right.
And I've got other views to share when it's appropriate.
All right, so as of a point of order, as Mr. Mathos said, first of all, we need to decide if we are going to accept this from staff moving forward in our discussion. Anybody have a thought regarding that?
I wouldn't like to see it accepted.
I would like more clarification.
You would or would not? I'm sorry.
It's,
Is it due to the fact that it's different than what the actual applicant had privy to? or-
it looks different to itself. But it is different. And unless I can see clearly where the C3 came from, is it published on the tax data? Does it show C3? And I'm trying to find that parcel in here so I can
Do we have an answer?
speak to that.
We don't know? Does it on tax data?
May I interrupt for a second, please?
Absolutely.
I'm looking over at Bob's little site with that light green.
This,
Yeah,
yeah,
could you hold that up for me, please, Bob?
This-
I
that was in
don't,
the package.
yeah, I don't have that. I know if it was in the packet, I have my whole
Wow,
packet.
Okay, you never light package.
But I have a light packet, because I don't
It should
have
be
it.
right behind the photographs,
Right, I have all the photographs,
not those.
and I have these, right.
It's after the legal description, Phyllis.
I'm sorry?
After the legal description and the GIS addenda,
Uh-huh.
should be right after that, right in the middle of your packet. Page number 20 of 65.
All right, well, I'm looking, it's not Not that it's hard to find because of the
Do you have another one?
color, but I don't have it, Jackie, help me out, honey. Page, all right, let's find it, honey. Oh,
Okay, I have found the
I'm so
tax
sorry.
card for lot
That's all right.
19.
Okay,
It was in the package, and she's correct, it does show it as R2. So on the tax data that would have been obtained from the county clerk or the tax appraiser's office, it is listed as R2.
so
Lot 19, that is.
so did the applicant, where did he get the information that it was a C3, other than probably from staff prior?
I don't know.
The applicant didn't put that in there, I did.
Oh, you did?
I did yes, as part of the evidence to go with the packet is the map.
Okay. Was that from a prior land use map we had? We just can't find the substantiate where the request was made in the past?
That's correct. Right now, that's what we have on GIS. And I've been searching through our ordinances and any type of rezones to find that lot being turned into C3 when Duke Energy, but that's so far back, there's nothing in records that we can determine.
Well, if it had happened, wouldn't it be listed on the tax appraiser site? So the tax appraiser site says R2. I say the discussion has ended with the fact that lot 19 is R2. But that's,
I'm not real sure Duke Energy's gonna agree with us very well.
well, you know,
All right.
they can use it regardless.
So that being said, so two of the board members are not, right off the get-go, are not comfortable with the information that was presented to us as part of our decision-making process currently. Is that correct? So I would agree with that. Mrs. Phyllis? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and, Bill, we're gonna put this aside then. And then we'll just work with the packet that we all have and studied prior. So, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Muse based off the packet that we had prior? Billy, Bob, you said you had some points you wanted to bring forward?
I do.
All right, you shall take the lead, my friend.
Mr. Muse,
Yes, sir.
if this collection of lots were segregated from the rest of the subdivision, in other words, access was not allowed from Sunglow, would that change your opinion of the rezoning?
Well, that's a good question. I think if proper planning would be if, in that situation where if you allowed in and out off of Leo Kid only.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
In such a case, would there be a privacy fence on,
There has to be. You have
on,
to-
on the street side?
Well, you have to have a privacy fence abutting residential. Anything commercial or residential must have privacy.
Does that include the street side?
I don't believe street side does.
But we
I'll
could make it a
stand corrected.
condition.
Beg your pardon?
But we could make it a condition.
Certainly could.
I just keep looking at this. Rezoning, you always seek the highest and best use for the property. That's been I've been in this for years. And we always sought to find the highest and best use of any piece of property during rezoning matters. This property is surrounded 2.5 sides with current commercial usages. So I've just, I have a question for the developer when it's his turn as to whether he can develop the property and maintain access only off of Leo Kid. Otherwise, I agree with what you're saying, this is right in the middle of a residential area, too many children playing to make it viable for continued commercial.
Well, I respect your opinion, but again, that's an encroachment on the residential, so, and that's the very thing I'm trying to protect in this, so, I mean, it's just two different opinions.
Sure.
Neither one's wrong.
Ms. Phyllis? Questions, concerns?
Nope.
Randy?
Are there any plans that anybody has proposed to build any residential homes or duplexes on that street?
Not that I know of.
Is there,
We really wouldn't know until they do bring the plans in for permit. they're basically lots right now that you could go build on. All you'd have to have is the plans for the building. All I'm saying.
What is the age of the residential units that are on the street currently? Do we,
Age of them?
do we have any idea what that is?
Probably from,
I just-
I would guess the 80s, 90s,
Okay.
I just looked through with news.
maybe a little earlier.
Mostly 1973, 1975,
Really?
1979.
Okay. Well, actually, they're in good shape then. That's pretty old. I'm surprised they're that old. Did it actually say they were that old? I'm not
I'm
questioning
just
you.
going by the
Tax rolls?
tax.
Yeah. That must be correct. I'm surprised.
1975, you agree with Randy, it's 70, 79, 81, you're right. There's one that was built in 94.
Okay. Ms. Smith, do you have any questions for Mr. Muse before we move on?
Not that I have a question, but I just went and drove through there several times, just to kind of get the feel.
Claudia, can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Mike. I don't know that I have any questions. I went through there a couple of times and drove through, and I never saw any kids. So I'm assuming that we do have pictures that show kids, but it doesn't look like there's this huge amount. I didn't see any playing in the street. I just don't think that, this piece of property has been there for so long, and as far as we know, no one's ever made application to build residential. How much longer is it gonna sit there if we don't approve this and do nothing?
Okay. I don't have any questions for
May
Mr.
I-
Muse this
May I
time.
say something first?
Sure, absolutely.
I'm a real proponent for parks in the city, and I'm keenly aware of it. And I have to tell you, I actually seen more children on that street than any other street. I'm not taking issue with you, especially in the mornings when you could see them, because I was surprised, because I didn't realize there were that many there. I find very few children in the city, unless I'm just in the wrong street. I don't know where they are, but anyway, it's interesting you say that, because I had noticed them several times driving through there. That's it, sorry. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
No worries. I don't have any questions for Mr. Muse at this time. I'd like to hear from the applicant. Mr. Matha?
The next proper step would be for Mr. Muse should, the mechanical matter, have his seat, and the applicant can come up and ask any questions.
Sure.
Mr. Muse himself, for cross-examination purposes.
May I get, yes.
Yeah, it might be easier for you to sit over there. That would be easier, Mr. Chairman. He sits there, and the applicant should give his name and his relationship to
Sure,
the...
please. If the applicant could step forward, state your name for the record, please, in relationship of the property.
Ron St. Martin, 5629 Lorenzen Road. I'm the agent for 2RJ, which is owned by my brother John and Charles Grant Jr.
And you could have the applicant put his case on now and reserve questions, to Mr. Muse, later if you want.
Sure.
He does have that opportunity.
Okay.
We're proposing to build this. We do have one address is on Leo Kidd for the parcel on the east side there. There is an address actual for Leo Kidd. The other two are on Sunglow. It is now currently 3 lots, about the 7 originally was. We're proposing 3 metal buildings, 5,000 square foot, and then the Leo Kidd side would be a 7,000 square foot. The opposite end of Sunglow on Washington is Air Prompt Air Conditioning. Air Prompt is gonna move from that building to the new one on Leo Kidd. The middle building will be taken by the other owner, and the third one will probably be leased out.
Okay.
We plan on landscaping, fencing, keeping it clean. As you ever drive by Air Prompt, it's clean, fence is always there, we keep it up. The land has been vacant forever, and it's a waste of taxpayer dollars. I mean, you could be gaining on it. I mean, it's your call, but I think it's a good thing for the city. We're surrounded by nothing but. Leo Kidd is nothing but commercial all the way down it, and everything behind it. That's pretty much it. It'll be nice looking buildings, they'll be upkept. I have seen the bus. I travel that road every morning and every afternoon, a couple times. My shop is right back here. I've seen the kids, I've seen the bus stop. They are on the south side in Duke Energy parking lot. It's one stop. I don't see where it'd create a whole lot more traffic. The one's just gonna be used for storage. They're probably coming from the other end and run out the other one. Question?
Mr. St. Martin, what did you plan on the other two? You said one's for storage.
There's gonna be 3 buildings. The one on Leo Kid will be 7,000 square foot. The middle one will be 5,000 square foot, and that'll be taken over by the other owner, which he's just gonna store his personal stuff, cars and things like that. And then we're probably gonna lease out the 3rd building.
As one unit, lease it as one unit or as multiple units?
It could be 1 or 2, the way it's
But the
gonna be set
maximum
up.
would be 2 units there.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you plan to maintain ownership of all 3 under one entity?
Yes.
Would there be any heartburn reserving access only to Leo Kid?
It would take away from what we're trying to gain on the Leo Kid one. We're trying, because he needs a bigger building, basically the whole thing. And I'm not sure how we could access them to it because the buildings are 50 by 100 deep. So
Could you
getting,
not turn them sideways?
You
the
could
way
turn
it's
them,
set up now, each building will be on its own lot.
I see that. But you said it's all be one ownership.
Right.
So I was wondering if you couldn't situate it so the buildings, the other 2 buildings were sideways, provide
even
a
if-
bypass and keep the traffic off of the Sunglow.
or even if the middle building was turned sideways,
True.
leaving a drive down
The
this,
width isn't there to get the front and rear setbacks on it,
on which, oh,
on
which,
on either one of them. At 100 foot, the lots are only that now in width.
Setbacks,
2020, 5.5.
if you were to. What is what is the actual dimension lengthwise on the north side of that property from, what is that in feet?
From Sunglow to the north?
From Leo Kid all the way across the entire property down Sunglow. What is the length of that?
You got me on that one.
I'm just trying to play a little devil's advocate with Mr. Breedlove here, and it's the fact that maybe if we turn this side building, you would still meet the setback requirements based on, depending what the actual length that is.
I believe they could. I've looked at this from a planning standpoint, and by turning the middle building sideways, even turning both sideways, you could bring a drive down either side and keep your parking in the front of the building and just not have to access Sunglow. I'm trying to find a way to make it work, because otherwise, I can't see it being beneficial like planners said. It is like to be residential. The only way to solve that is to, divorce it from the residential area.
Well, how would you get a fire truck down through there to make a U-turn if should something happen, only on one way in and one way out?
You have to have a
You don't have
secondary
a
egress.
cul-de-sac for it to turn around on.
Right.
Okay, that settles that then.
Well, you could make an emergency secondary egress
Yeah, you could.
with sliding gate or something like that. That's,
May I comment?
absolutely.
That's a civil engineering problem. That's a planning problem for the people who design the sites.
Right.
I'm an architect. I know. That's someone, you give them criteria, and the fire department you must make it work. It's not even a matter of not working or having a choice on it. You have to be able to get the fire truck back in there. So whoever takes this on, whoever the engineering firm is, must take it and make certain that the setbacks are there, the landscaping's there, the separations, the buffers, the fire trucks come and go as they need to. That's proper planning.
Anyone have any other questions for the applicant?
What's the height of the buildings?
22 feet.
22 feet?
And the construction?
Metal, steel.
Not that that matters, but.
So each building would have one drive ramp off of Sunglow into
The one parcel with the 2 buildings is one ramp, one driveway in and one driveway out. Did you think they not get copies of that, what we originally submitted?
Yeah.
It's just,
So there'd be
so they go in and
Right
go
here.
to each one.
Right.
They share the property line
all
there.
parking in the front along Sunglow.
We have 2 site plans.
You have
We have
2 site
diff-
plans?
2 different site plans, yes.
Where's the second one?
Honestly, I'm looking at one.
It's in the packet.
Okay. I'm looking at the one that is Point West Engineering title border, shows a 7,000 square foot building running parallel with Sunglow. The other two buildings running perpendicular.
This one says Point West also, same thing, it's the two same, the differences. I agree with you on that.
You see what I'm looking at?
Yes,
Okay.
I agree with you.
So you don't find any merit to trying to maintain Leo Kid as the only access?
It's not the best use of the property for what we're trying to get out of it.
Okay.
I mean, you're only 100 foot wide. The two buildings are 100 feet already, even if you turn them sideways.
What's the depth of the physical property then? I mean, that, I guess, how's that for a question? Because if the buildings are right now at 50 by 100, just by eyeballing it.
wanna say they're 140.
150, 140?
What is the depth on that? I don't have that in front of me, Tom.
It'd be on the tax card. I'm looking for that now.
I agree, they look to be 100, 120. Trying to be helpful.
Oh, it says it's more than.
Well, it's gotta be 140, or the building that's 100 foot long
Yeah.
wouldn't meet the
What may
20/20
have-
setback.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
I would say it's
right
140,
there, we know it's at
150.
least
There you go.
140.
Right.
At minimum.
And let me just play a few thoughts around for a minute. Be open-minded for a minute. If you did turn it sideways, you could have a hammerhead turnaround at the back in front of the rear 5,000 square foot building. That would take care of your emergency access. I've used those plenty of times. If the buildings are sideways, the one middle building sideways, you could drive in off of Leo Key and come down one side or the other. You don't necessarily have to have that building backed up to the detention pond. You could have it out toward the road. But you could come past it to a general parking area for the other two buildings. If one is storage only, let's put it in the least advantageous spot and rent out the one that's the more advantageous. At least that would keep the business traffic off of Sunglow. Now, I'm aware that we have other commercial pieces on Sunglow. They're on the other end. And you are in the middle of some duplexes. Whether there's kids there today or not, they are affordable housing. That's generally where young families tend to gravitate, is toward the affordable housing part. And they have kids, and we see that. I'm just trying to find a way to see to your benefit while also protecting the city's interest. I'm trying not to be so thick-headed that I ignore the fact that this could be a good thing for the city, but also don't ignore the fact that children are important.
Right.
That's just my food for thought.
Ms. Gray, any other questions for the applicant?
No, thank you, not at this time.
Let's say that we deny this. What would be your plan B? With that piece, with that
Can you
land?
repeat that for the record, please?
Let's say that we deny. What would be your plan B for that piece of property?
It's hard to say at this point, because we want to steadily push forward for this. The last owners had it for 8, 9, 10 years. I believe they tried, at one point, tried to rezone it, and then just let it sit there. They lost money selling it. It's just sitting there vacant.
I don't have any further questions at this time. Actually, I would like to hear from the residents or anybody else who was for discussion, and then, Ms.
Do you want to
Mathew?
present any, ask him if he has any other evidence?
Sure, do you have any other
anything else
evidence you would
wanna
like
put
to present to the board?
That's it for the moment.
Perfect.
on? Okay, then you're up to public.
Okay. At this time, I'll open up to the public. Please state your name for the record and your address.
My name is Andre Cash. I live in Pasco County at 3321 Ashmont Drive in Land O'Lakes. However, I own the 4 residential duplexes for the total of 8 units starting on 5914, 5916, 5920, 5922, 5924, 5926, 5928, and 5934 Sun Globe. Have strong Ukrainian accent, so if anybody has any issues with me speaking, please ask me. I'll paraphrase. Very concerned about the proposed development. I would like to thank Mr. Muse for his observation about about children on Sunglow. And although I do not have the exact head count of number of primary school age children living, renting from us, I can roughly estimate that we have at least 4 or 5 kids in those 8 residential units. Good kids, they are indeed affordable units. However, our tenants do appreciate the quiet nature of the street, and we always felt that it was a marketing advantage for us that it's a quiet residential end of the street. Although I can appreciate, and I'm in no way anti-development, and I can appreciate the commercial nature of the street that goes north to south, but majority of the frontage of the subject property faces our residential units, and these are real people. I know each of them by name. It's Lola, Greg, Brittany, Nicole, Edgar, Victoria, Andrew, et cetera, they would be affected if there is industrial use across the road. They would probably feel less safe, let their children play on the street if there was commercial use of the property across the street. And we feel that the value of our property, which we recently paid $328,000 for, would be affected and diminished. I don't have any hard numbers to support it, but those can be obtained, and we'll be glad to work on that if that would make my argument stronger. I appreciate your suggestion about rerouting the entrance onto the property. That would partially mitigate my concern, but still, depending on the usage of the property, I would guess that it would make some noise during the business hours and make residential uses less desirable across the street. With that said, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
First of all, let me applaud you with, you've done a nice job on that street that, as many of us know who've been here many years, that street was the bane of our existence for
We'll
many
continue
years.
improving it.
So I'll applaud you for that. I do have a couple questions. First of all, did you speak directly with any of the tenants regarding this physical matter?
Not at this time, and I'll be glad to provide written response if necessary, but I was pressed hard for time and barely made it through the traffic. I do not have any response at this
Okay.
time. Please understand my concern. I don't want to spook them for the lack of
Sure, of
better
course.
words with, something common here, so I don't, but I'll be glad to provide those.
I would hope they weren't spooked from that standpoint, because it's pretty well documented that on the street with signage. But the condition of the physical units, because that was one of my concerns when I asked the question about the age of the units. And I understand most of them were in the mid-70s. How was the condition of the units when you took possession of them?
Late 70s. We bought it from Mark and Kelly Halverson. They had relatively newer roofs that looks like they have good 10+ years in them. All 4 buildings need a good paint job, and we're slowly working on that, applying silicone to any cracks and natural aging of the properties, and planning a new paint job within the next quarter or so.
Okay.
Replaced couple units with new tile, and proud to say that they are in good condition, and we were able to raise rent slowly, although still relatively affordable in high 600s, low 700s range, and good part of our tenants are family people.
Okay. From a personal aspect, I make a good portion of my living selling residential real estate. So I own a real estate company in the city of Port Richey. I sell a lot of property in the city of Port Richey. About 95% of what I do personally is residential. I do about 5% of commercial a year. That being said, I want to speak on the devaluation issue concerning you had. As a property owner, as Mr. Breedlove said earlier, it is the developer's intent to do the highest and best use of a property. Now, it is my personal contention that a rezone for your specific purposes is actually advantageous for you, due to the fact it will make your property values go up. But that's just based on my own personal. I'm not going to give you, you would, of course, have to hire your own professional and else from that standpoint. So I wanted to kind of mitigate what I believe to be not so much that your opinion was different than mine on that. So from that standpoint, I wanted to address that. Like I said, you've done a wonderful job over there. I'm very happy to see what has happened and transpired. Does anybody have any questions for? Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea of the amount of commercial traffic currently on Sunglow that's transitioning from Leo Kid over to Washington?
It's very hard for me to, my partner Sebastian, he is more kind of day-to-day operation and could speak if he had any observation, but I would say it's minimal.
I'm just wondering, because with the western end of Sunglow already commercial, the eastern end of Sunglow being on Leo Kid, there's bound to be some cross-traffic currently occurring. And the other side of the coin is just how much more will there be over what we currently have? Have you already got commercial traffic?
Right, I personally, I'm not in best position to say there is no way, we documented that, but my guess there is some.
But do you have any complaints from residents or anything of that to act on?
No.
Okay.
May I comment?
Yes, please.
I travel the entire city and daily, and I have not noticed, good question, but I have not noticed as much traffic through there as it goes on down Leo Kid to Pine Hills.
Right.
And goes that way. I, from time to time, have gone there. I go to a doctor, just up, and I go there and go back up to it, but I have not noticed that's a good question. But I have not noticed the heavy traffic there, as I think he's saying. It really tends to be a residential street.
It feels
I'm not
like
arguing the
residential.
point, I'm just
I
saying
drove on it.
observation, yeah,
I drove on it the other day, I've been on it several times. It's quiet.
yeah.
It is a residential street, but it is surrounded by a lot of commercial, almost inundated with commercial around it.
Yeah, really.
So I could very well understand gentleman's desire to use the property to commercial use. I'm a facilitator. I like to see things happen, makes everyone happy. I just see a way to make this work, but it would require the developer to be willing to have some conditions and require the neighbors to be understanding of those conditions. But again, I'm not here to counsel, I'm just here to ask questions, and that's why I was asking that.
Thank you, Mr. Breedlove, and thank you, Chairman, for your comments. And I want to respectfully disagree with your assessment that this would improve industrial across the street, would improve value of the residential. I met with many prospective tenants, and quiet nature of the street was an important factor for them. So having trucks coming in and out, or whatever the usage of that proposed property, although with, development is needed in Pasco County, and but at this time, I'm very concerned with the proposal.
You have another question?
Yes, sir. How long have you owned those duplexes?
How long I owned them? We purchased them at the end of March of last year.
Oh, just last year? Okay.
27.
Have you had any consideration or plans to possibly purchase those one or more of these lots right now and build a new duplexes?
I would love to, depending on what the purchase price for this residential, then would be something that would interest me and my partner. We would love to develop more residential there.
Okay. That's, I own property on the south end of Leo Kid, and there's residential that was grandfathered in or something, some point many years ago, and I own commercial property. I have a mixed-use residential and commercial right next door, and then there's more commercial, and then there's a couple of residentials at the end of the road. And it's a problem of, because residential and commercial, they don't mix well. You live in a home, you don't want trucks, and if you get trucks, you don't want somebody out there, you know, worried about, you know, watering their flowers or something, you know?
Thank
So
you.
it's a whole different world. We have dumpsters and things like that, and they don't. So I can understand their point of view, and we have our point of view. But at the same time, I'm concerned in this situation, I don't foresee anybody, especially the two lots that adjoin Leo Kidd, regardless of what their address is, but they're up, you know, they come up against Leo Kidd, those first two lots, 19, 18. I don't foresee anybody ever building a duplex, an apartment, a residential home, anything there.
I don't see why not. I mean, with a proper fence and some landscaping on
Yeah.
Leo Kidd.
Well, I mean, that's my impression. I would never look there to build a home, and apparently nobody else has in the past 30 years, you know. So that's my concern, and so it's just that area is just gonna kind of stay in limbo just like it is. There's gonna be these empty lots, and there's gonna be a rental duplex at the other end.
Yeah,
forever.
I wish I knew that the property is for sale. I understand the developer purchased it in the near future. I wish I had an opportunity to crunch my numbers and see if we can attract capital to do something residential with that, but thank you.
I think.
Ms. Smith,
What are your average leases? Are they a year?
your
Yeah.
microphone.
Although we have shorter terms as well.
Never get used to that. Average leases are a year,
The longest is the year.
is a year. And then in the past, because you've only owned it, it sounds like for about a year or so, do you know what resident, like how many years average the tenants prior to your year were living there? Were they just living a year? Were they living 5 years?
Yeah, we had quite a bit of turnover recently within this year, and the reason for that is that we saw economic opportunity when we purchased that. We felt that they are on the market. When we bought them, they were as low as $500, plus we were paying for their water and trash removal. We were able to raise those leases by $100, $150 in some, almost $200 in some instances, but there were an older lady that's been there for a long time, don't know if it's 5, 6, what have you, but there were a couple longer-term residents that unfortunately couldn't swallow the rate increase that we.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, the proper procedure now would allow the applicant to cross-examine the witness if he has
Absolutely.
any questions. Do you have any questions?
My first question is, do you know how many times the police are called there a week? The police department is called to those apartments every week. Do you know? Tuesday night, there was 5 of them there.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. We're meeting with Officer Hubbard tomorrow.
I see quite a bit there. I mean, I live right around the corner.
I would like to answer that.
Sure. Please.
And who-
Mr. St. John?
Yeah, this short statement creates an impression that we're, providing bad kind of neighborhood service, which is not the fact. The police was called in connection with Unit 5914, which is one of the 2 legacy tenants that we acquired with the property. What happened was the gentleman and his mother moved out of Unit 5914 and subletted without our permission to his either relative or buddy, who, what appears to me from conversation with Officer Hubbard, was doing something illegal in the property, and there was a shootout on the street recently. When I called, and it was unfolding within probably a month, when I called the original tenant, he lied to me and said, no, I'm just out of town. My brother babysitting the property for me. which was clearly a lie, and tomorrow, we're meeting with Officer Howard to replace the locks, post no trespassing notice on the street, and remove those troublemakers from the property. Other than that, next unit is a family tenant, and all other tenants passed thorough background check, and we don't have any problems with it. Appreciate your concern.
Why do the kids play in the street?
Why do they play on the street?
I travel that road 6 to 8 times a day.
Why do
I mean, the kids shouldn't be playing in the street. I mean,
I'm
it's
not,
parenting.
I'm not their parent, you know, the kids, you know, sometimes they play at the back, but kids are kids, they run different directions, they're, you know, they
Well, we're
don't have
talking
GPS
2-year-olds.
devices, yeah. I appreciate your comment, but they
But
don't have any.
there's a lot of activity over there, and I understand your concern.
Yeah, I cannot influence parents how they raise their kids, I can give them a notice and ask them not to do, but it's the kids, sometimes they run.
Okay, that was it, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll close it to the public, and I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. And I will go around the table. Mr. Breedlove? Comments, concerns, opinions?
I've probably voiced mine fairly succinctly so far. I do think that this property qualifies for a commercial type use to a certain extent. I don't think that the full depth, I think the first 2 lots maybe, but all of the lots, which would total 6 by the deed, gets really up into the residential area. I mean, without some, separation, I can't see that being beneficial. I live on a street that gets busy at times, and I can tell you it's highly uncomfortable with the amount of commercial traffic that passes. And I don't have kids. So I would hate to see us take a quiet residential street and turn it into a busier thoroughfare, although this doesn't look like it's gonna increase that much. You got, storage unit and a unknown business occupying the 2 that would come off of Sunglobe. I'm just concerned.
Thank you. Ms. Gray?
My concern has been with the families that live in close proximity with children. And there are 2 signs that are on the street that say children, caution, or however it's worded, children at play. And that's always my concern, because children have no place to play. They have to play in the street. I mean, times are different than they were years ago, and we have to be careful. And I think coming into that area with children, I just don't know how we're going to protect them. And that's my concern.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
Well, I think that it is a residential area, but it is rented, it's leased, and I don't think there's any way to know how many families are gonna come and go with children. I think best for the city is to have that convert to commercial. Maybe speed bumps is the answer for the kids. If we have speed bumps down that street and some fencing around the building. But I can't see that property continuing to be empty after all these years and someone maybe buying it to put residential. It's just gonna continue to be empty.
Mr. Stout?
I think for the lot 19 and lot 18, the ones that abut Leo Kid, I think that would be very reasonable to turn that into commercial. And I don't think it would affect the rest of the neighborhood at all. If you want to try to mitigate traffic, you could put no thoroughfare or no trucks wherever the sign is. for that. There's some of those same signage is further down the road off of the Congress. That some of the roads that I cut through, and there's a no truck, because it's a residential area, but it's all surrounded by commercial. So that can help, and especially if you're talking to the people that are gonna occupy the commercial buildings, and you make sure that they know that they're being watched. That'd be, those occupants would be the one, that'd be the only increased traffic is from them. I don't see any kind of business that's gonna be there where people are gonna be driving across town just to come to there, or, you know, any kind of distance. So I don't see increased traffic as a problem. I do see it as the residential homes that are there now, for them to have to face the commercial buildings. There's, you know, 4 or 5, there's like lots of complexes on it. I could see where, whatever issues that you have now as far as getting good tenants in there, I could see it, that even being harder, and the quality of your tenants I see would be affected by that. So maybe if the applicant would consider just developing those 2 first lots, 19 and 18.
I'm gonna correct you, 18's not in question. Correct?
16 and 18.
16 and 18, you're right. Yeah, 18 is already owned by a different,
Oh, okay, it's in that, all blocked out. So
sorry.
We're talking
So you're talking, yeah, so it's,
19 is one of them?
yeah.
Nope,
So it's 18, 16, 15, 14, 13, and 12.
Oh, just the,
19 was on the applicant's original packet showing that was C3, which now we found out is somehow R2 again.
okay, so 18 is not included in this?
18 is included.
18, 19 is
18.
not.
18 is included, so is 16.
Right.
So maybe this lot 16 and 18 then, those first 2. I mean, that would be my recommendation, and maybe these 2 businessmen here could talk to each other about those other lots, and we could build some nice pretty duplexes on there.
All right, I'm gonna give,
Deal maker.
this in general concerns me due to the fact that these parcels in general have been in question multiple times in the years that I've been here. I've been doing this for probably 15 years now, and I don't remember last time it came over, but I've heard of other people trying to buy this property with the said consideration of doing the same thing we're talking about. But that being said, the last time a residential unit was built on this street was in the mid-90s, which was almost 30 years ago. So the property has sat vacant for 40-some years. And although I understand staff's concern with spot zoning, my concern is the fact that we've created a precedent by surrounding it and even telling the applicant that it's surrounded by C3, because we have an issue with the fact that our future land use maps have not been consistent over the last 10 years, 20 years. God, longer than that, probably, huh, Phyllis? So my contention would be to allow the rezone based off the fact that there's nothing been done with the property. However, I do agree with Mr. Breedlove. If that were to happen, I believe that the applicant should work with with somebody in a planning commission to create or work through the traffic concerns. Because I agree, I'm not sure that putting any undue traffic in a residential area could put other people at risk. So, but that being said, I think the applicant has every right to utilize the property to its highest and best use. And that concerns me that it would sit vacant again for another 30 years. At which time it'll probably be, everything will be converted to commercial at that point. So, so if there's any other questions, concerns for staff, Mr. Matho, is it,
Could we ask the applicant?
if he wants to, yeah, absolutely. you have a question for the applicant? Absolutely.
I won't put you on the spot, but the same question I just threw out there in open, would you consider just applying to rezone those first 2 lots?
No, sir.
No, so it'd be an all or
The
none?
best use
situation?
for the amount of money we paid for the property is to have all of it.
Mhm.
And we only have one driveway for the 2 buildings,
Right.
and there's already no through truck sign on the road, right in front of the property. It would just be there and back to Leo Kidd.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, concerns, questions? Any other questions for staff?
I
Oh, yeah.
do.
Yes, ma'am.
Sean, staff denied, and I would like to maybe hear why.
I'm sorry, ask again,
No,
Phyllis.
I-
She said that
apologize.
staff denied, and she wants the basis of
An
your denial.
explanation, can you?
The basis of that is the very crux of what we're discussing here. It is a residential area. Someone prior to us determined that was residential. Unfortunately, they put commercial around them. Unfortunately, we've allowed people to encroach into it with other commercial areas, which we should have never done. And I'm sorry, I hate to sound matter of fact about that, but it is. It should have never happened. So now we're doing again, simply saying because we need this property developed, we're going to allow this very same thing to happen again. And that's why we're against it, is that we should not encroach on this residential development here, anywhere else in the city. We have a moral obligation to maintain the residential character in the city, in any city. And that's why we're opposing to it. Does that help?
Absolutely.
It does help, I suppose. Probably doesn't help the developer, but,
Can I respond to that?
Sure, certainly.
The problem with that mentality is when you look at the land use map, and here's the residential, and everything else is surrounding it's commercial and industrial. And that's the problem, been the problem for the last 15 years in this city. That entire section inside of that part of the area has always been an issue with the residential that is there, has been blight for many years, has been area of concern from, which I really wish that the chief was here, because I would love to hear what the police have to say regarding that. I did see his recommendation was no due to the fact it's residential, but like the applicant stated, there is a lot of calls that go to that section. If you talk to the guys on the guys on the ground pushing that beat over there, it's a pretty rough little area. It has been for years. It's better now. It has been much better than it has been in the past. There were years there, but I wouldn't drive over there after dark, honestly, for fear that they would like my Jeep more than I did. So, but Phyllis has a good point. It's residential in the midst of everything. And it has been for many, many years.
But-
And the problem that we have is, if we don't do something, I'm concerned that the property is gonna still sit there for another 30 years. Because I honestly don't see anybody developing and putting duplexes there. You may see that, and we are in a serious, especially Pasco County in general, we have a serious problem with a lack of lower income properties. I mean, we have a real problem with that. There really isn't any. So I applaud you for the fact you still have some. And what you're renting for currently, even raising the rents, is still extremely inexpensive in Pasco County. So, but I don't see anybody spending $300,000 to build more duplexes.
But the very fact that it was zoned residential, if it is, whenever that happened, if it were developed now, if there were residences all along through there, while it is an enclave inside of a commercial area, it works quite well. I have to agree with you. I'm surprised that the units were that old. I'm a forensic architect, and I didn't realize they were that old. I missed it. I haven't seen the crime and the issue. I drive around every single day, and I'm not arguing my point, other than just the fact I have not
Sure. seen
that. I have seen the children. There's certainly, we have residential area, or we have problems in any residency, you're aware of that. But but the very fact that we need more affordable housing indicates to me that we should simply not do that, would not change it to commercial, given our need to develop. I'm an architect. I had a business 40 years. 98% of my business was commercial. Of all people, I wouldn't go against commercial.
Sure.
It just, this does not make sense to do this. But it didn't make sense to rezone the other one either, the single lot there, so.
I'm a little upset the fact that we don't have somebody here from emergency services to discuss that. That's a big concern of mine. That has been a blighted area for a long time, and
You know, and I appreciate that concern, Sean. Looking at this, I'm not sure how many people live in there, but just the lots is, you know, close to 19, 20 families
right.
there currently. So it is predominantly residential. I'm disappointed to hear the developer's not willing to consider less, but, you know, those 4 lots that stick down in the middle of it are smack dab in the middle of a residential area that I just hate to see that. I mean, I grant his right to develop 16 and 18 as commercial, and would certainly never want to argue that. I just find 12 through 15 less obvious.
Now, using that as a point, which you had said originally about changing the physical access to Leo Kidd, is that still your contention originally? Absolutely.
If he would agree to that, I would support the full rezoning. If he would agree to restrict his access to Leo Kidd, because that would give us a privacy fence along Sunglow and next to 12.
Right.
That would answer everybody's concerns with child safety,
It would-
answer the concerns
It would
with
answer mine.
vision, answer the concerns with everything except for a fire truck turning around at the back of the lot. That could be resolved with a fire gate.
Sure.
I just think that, you know, you want to plan out a piece of property. He's obviously done his homework. He's obviously done his cost analysis, and he knows what it's going to cost to build it as it is. He probably knows to pretty close amount what his outlay is going to be, and imposing additional restrictions, I know, is going to impact the viability of that project, which is why I was trying to find a way to mitigate that by adjusting it. I've done site plans since 1981. I've been doing civil engineering commercial site plans. Commercial is the bulk of my work. And I believe it could work.
I agree with you.
But that would be the only way I could vote for it, is to have it, you know, as strictly off of Leo Kidd.
Any other questions, concerns, discussion?
No.
Yes, sir. Please.
Mr. Breedlove, if developer finds it agreeable to allow with access from Leo Kidd, what tools in your possession you could recommend you can address the traffic by moving access onto Leo Kidd, and aesthetical view with privacy fence, maybe some landscaping. What about noise? What can we do?
I don't, you know, I get woken up at 4:30 in the morning with a trash truck driving down my road.
It's a good point.
I don't know any way to mitigate noise in an area that's predominantly commercial.
Right.
You'll probably have as much noise coming from the other commercial uses currently there, maybe more than he's gonna have in his. I don't see his development in its current form creating that much noise.
Can I ask the applicant a question? Sure. To answer his concern, what would be the proposed hours of operation for those
Well, Air Promise
units?
hours are 8 to 5 a.m. and that
Monday through
basically
Friday,
everything.
correct?
Yes.
And the main activities?
It's an air conditioning company. The big problem with turning building sideways, if somebody has parts delivered or something that comes in a semi or big truck, you're gonna have to try to get around. One building is almost center of the lot on the Leo Kidd side. There's only 20 foot on one side and 30 on the other to get around it. So trying to get, say a semi had to come in there, how's it gonna back all the way down through all that?
So, but if you were able to adjust the current entrance on Leo Kidd to the south east corner of that property where you made a straight drive back is what I think was Mr. Breedlove was talking about.
That's what it is now.
That would
On
still-
Sunglow side, just back in and back out.
Right.
That would still pose a problem with trying to, you would not turn a semi around in this property
May-
in any case.
may I say
In
something?
any,
Sure.
any layout that he's proposed so far, you're not gonna turn a semi around.
The
So-
size, I'm sorry,
I will finish in just a minute, I promise you. So your argument of semi, I'm gonna have to say is almost moot, because you've got that situation now with your current plan. Where's the semi gonna unload? He's gonna have to park in the street.
No, he's going back straight up to the back of the building. The building's 100 foot deep. It's 35 feet off the street to the property line, to the building there. The semi's 52 plus the rig. The building's 100. You can back all the way in,
So you're gonna back him into that turn in and back him up
into
to
the
the
entranceway
building?
there. It's designed so that it goes either
I mean,
building.
any idea how many times you'd see a semi on that road?
No.
My brother's AC office, they maybe once a week. Most of the time, it's in big 20-foot box trucks.
Would your brother's gonna be getting one of those buildings?
Yeah, he's moving from the
He's
west end
moving
to
to
the east end.
7,000 square foot, right?
Correct. He just needs bigger space, more space. The other one's just gonna be whatever somebody wants. They wanna work on lawnmowers or something, well, you know, a repair shop. I don't see it as a big business with comings and goings. It'd be
Right. I don't
employees
see this
or
being-
2, 3 that park there. That'd be about it.
So
They're
where would
mostly
your semi,
warehouse.
under your plan, where would your semi come in at?
Off of Sunglow.
Hmm.
On that parcel,
On that parcel, be which one?
the 2 buildings.
The two? But those two buildings, you don't know who the tenant's gonna be.
No.
One's a storage and one's unknown.
One, the owner said he's just gonna store some of his own stuff in it. But he may rent out, it's designed so that it can be, each one can have 2. Be it 2 big doors, 2 entry doors in each, if they wanna divide it down the middle.
I'd be doubly concerned thinking we're putting semis on Sunglow.
may I add now?
Please.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, everyone, if you will accept my professional background, the buildings are not big enough for semi-deliveries. It may be a special order where something comes there, but there's no way those small buildings are gonna have semi-trailer trucks coming every day, every week.
No,
They might
not at
occur
all.
once a year. If that's the case, then that driver will figure that out ahead of time.
Okay.
We've done over 500 grocery stores and we're aware of how these things work, so that is not an issue as far as getting semi-trailer trucks back in there. It's not big enough. Let me say one other thing is, this gentleman is respectfully, is a developer. 100% of my work has been with developers. In a period of time, they're gonna sell this project. And we have no idea who they're going to sell it to, nor who's gonna be there in the future and what they do with it. So again, this goes back to our need to control the zoning from the front end, not after the fact, as we have with a separate site here. Does that make sense?
I understand that concern, but that being said, how long has Eric Prompt been in the city?
That location there, 15 years?
But in,
He's not going anywhere, he lives in the city.
yeah, he's been in,
He's gonna retire there.
John's lived in the city for 20-plus years, easy.
27, 28, I built his house.
So that actually doesn't concern me at all, because I think he's probably just busting the seams where he is currently on Washington,
He
right?
just needs more space.
Any other questions for the applicant? Concerns? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
As the board knows, we don't make decisions, we make recommendations. I would agree personally with Bob in the fact that it is in the best interest of the city to let the property owner utilize his property to its highest and best use that he sees fit. But at the same time, I agree that it is our responsibility as a board to, as Phyllis said, to watch out for the little ones, you know, I mean, the children on the street. And I think if the developer were able to work with the city to reconfigure, and I understand it's gonna come at an expense, and I understand it may be, it's very difficult, it could be very difficult, although I personally believe it can be done rather well. and look really nice, I think that that would give him a case to actually have it rezoned. Because I'm concerned that we're gonna be in the same position we are 10 years from now if something doesn't happen, and somebody else is gonna be here doing the same thing, and we're gonna be sitting on the same piece of vacant land for the next 30 years. God. Anybody else? I've spoken my piece. If we don't have any other questions or concerns, I'll entertain any motions at this point.
I'd like to move to approve.
Yeah, was that a motion to approve?
Yes, Ms. Gray made a motion to approve.
That would,
Any,
for point of clarity,
please?
there's been a lot of conversation here, and I suspect that there's some lack of understanding.
Sure.
The application presently before you is to go from a residential zone to a C3, I believe, okay? Motion to approve has been put on the floor, waiting a second, so everybody understands, and believe me, that means that the applicant can do anything in a C3. That's a C3, anything, okay? That's, all these questions about what's intended to be done
Correct.
were irrelevant unless you want to put some conditions on that.
Is it in our right?
Does that make any sense?
Absolutely.
You understand what I mean? I mean, we heard all this tenants who's going to be there. Well, look, they could sell the property 3 weeks later. So if you're going to make a motion to approve, which is fine, if you don't do anything else, it's a C3, goes through, recommendation, C3 can do anything you want in a C3 at any hours, do anything you want.
To
That's the
clarify
motion
then,
that's been made.
to clarify for her, her benefit, can we make a motion to approve based off the conceptual drawings we have and?
That's, well, I presume that's what was inherent in the motion and not
Correct.
stated. If so, then you want to bring the applicant up and see what he would agree to. You don't want to pass, make a
Of
motion.
course.
So,
Phyllis,
so
do
the
you want to
question to
modify
the
your
applicant
motion?
would be, it's a motion to approve with the uses, you got to remember, that these buildings, light industrial use, generally with the conceptual drawings, if he's willing to do that. Right now his application is broad.
Right.
I presume he would, right? But he needs to say that, So it would be, I don't know what you would classify that as, light industrial, light commercial, or generally 3 structures on 3 parcels,
C3 is C3.
No,
Could be anything.
they want to limit it to those conceptual drawings.
Is that what you're,
To the warehouses.
Warehouses, is that what you would refer to them as?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, then you could say the conceptual drawings, then, if that's fine with you. He comes in with those drawings, something close to it. Anything else?
no,
Write that down.
Does that limit him from changing the use to
Yes.
Yes,
the same building but a different use?
that's where I'm going, that's what I'm trying to say, Mr. Breedlove, that's exactly right. When you say these conceptual drawings, well, those are gonna be the buildings that'll be there forever.
But the buildings are non-specific to their use.
I got that, yeah, it'd be a lot better to do it some other way. Otherwise, you're gonna say you can only have those kind of buildings forever.
Well,
know.
I can do all kinds of obnoxious things in a steel building.
There you go.
And,
In a C3 zone.
why would a C2, no, C1, why would C1 not be appropriate?
Well, it's not appropriate right now because it's not before you.
I understand that, but
All right, it's.
Because he didn't apply-
Short-
'cause he didn't
Short
apply for
answer,
that.
that's not an option today.
I was using.
I mean, you could, call it something, you understand? I mean, like warehousing, retail, whatever it would be, Mr. St. John, you can get to something that's not conceptual drawing.
Right.
If that's what the motion is. It's your motion, Ms. Gray, or did you just want a blanket motion to give him free rein at C3?
A C. say
You made a
again?
motion to approve. Do you
Right.
want to allow the applicant to do anything that's allowed in the C3?
or do you want to put constraints on it?
Right. That's the only reason I interceded here, because I was not confident that the motion was understood by the panel.
I think we should have some kind of constraints. I don't want something going in there that would be,
You can, see, I gave you a list of your choices.
Sure.
Okay? Conditions which may be imposed. Go to the last one, as I stated before this began. Notwithstanding any other subsection, if the applicant had his option his option, you have to want to do this, proposes a specific use or range of uses permitted under the zoning classification which the applicant has made. So Mr. St. John could say, look, I want to use these for storage, this, that, and the other thing. That's up to him. As a condition of approval of such proposal. And that would be there forever.
Well, Jim, could we approve, with the condition that when the property is to be developed, that it comes back for approval at that point? I don't know. No, can't do that.
No.
We
I
rely upon
understand
our
the
city
question.
staff.
You can't say that it's subject to the building of further approval. No.
Further
It's a use.
approval.
You can limit the use. There are 20 different uses in C3. You could limit the use, okay?
So we could limit the use to, as they're currently asking for, basically warehousing and then,
Or something else. I mean, he may want to sell it 10 years from now,
Sure.
too. More than a warehouse, you know. You'd have to go to C3 zoning code, pop it open, and say what uses. See if he wants to limit it to warehouse or, warehouse may be enough. I don't know if you want to add any retail operation. He probably doesn't, but just warehousing, Mr. St. John, is that what you're looking for? Warehousing then?
warehousing and general storage establishments.
Yes, that would work.
Would you like to?
And that's how the zoning would, this gets filed against the property. That's how it would be
Correct.
forever. And that's for the
I'm
protection of.
just, I'm just so reluctant to approve something that is going to change the look of the property, the overall look of the property, where there are children. And there are children, I mean,
As a matter of protocol, you have made a motion. You withdraw your motion?
I withdraw.
You cannot make a motion and argue against your motion.
Okay, all right, then I'm going to withdraw my motion.
A motion on the table.
Okay. But it's such a problem because we want the city to be developed, but we want it to be developed in the best interest, of course, of the owner, naturally, taxpayer, but at the protection of the area and the people that are living in that area. And that's my problem, because I have been on that street. I use that street. There are 2 signs that say, you know, caution, children at play. And that's where my concern is.
I must admit, I'm torn as well. We have a current resident, longtime resident, want to expand a business. And I hate to shackle that because that is the crux of our city, is people living and working in our
Absolutely.
city. We want that. I just have a real problem with 12 through 15.
Right. On the proposed zoning sheet? Oh, the 12 through 15 lots, I understand.
Can we make a motion to approve just 2 of the lots?
That would require the approval of the applicant. He's made one application for all 3 parcels.
Right.
It's not
And he's-
lots.
and he's already stated
I
he
don't
didn't wanna
know
do
which
that.
lots go with parcels.
The application is,
That's,
Okay.
but the
Before,
application
right.
is
Right.
for one. You have one application unless he agrees to that and wants to withdraw a portion of it.
And I would like to, I would recommend the applicant submits a new application and limits it to the,
No, he doesn't need to do that. He could agree to it right here.
well, I asked him, he didn't want to do it, so I'm asking him to consider that.
He'd have to, he could consider it, but I'm just saying for purposes of today's hearing.
Well, for purposes of today's hearing, for the applicant, would you agree to change your application for only lot, was that 16 and 18?
It's 1 lot. There's 3 lots there.
Right,
well,
I
then
have
the
3
one
parcel
lot,
numbers, 6 lots.
right.
I don't know which lots go with
They were
which.
joined.
I realize that, but there's still,
Those two, the two.
yeah, there's 3 parcels still there, they've been joined. You made an application for 6 lots with 3 parcels, which are comprised of 6 lots. They've been put together.
Interestingly enough, the deed lists 6 tax parcels.
They've been joined, the 3 parcel numbers are
True,
on
but the deed still listed that way.
Yes, they are still, they probably just hasn't come up. You've done this recently, right? Yeah, they did a month and a half ago, it's still coming up. On the application, you'll see 3 parcel numbers, okay? And that represents the 6 lots. Now, we can determine which, we could take a break and determine which parcel number, but that would have to be something Mr. St. John would want to do.
Can we,
I'd have to do with the owners.
okay, so, without that amendment to your application, or a change to your application, then I would put a motion to deny.
I have a motion on the floor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yay.
Nay,
Nay.
nay.
That motion doesn't carry.
Right.
So 2 in favor, 3 opposed.
Right.
So then,
So that motion doesn't carry.
Right. I think,
I could see, everybody look at, where is it? Well, if you look at 2.2.2, and it's the codes for, section 2256, the general commercial zoning district.
Right.
Number 5, which is the second page, it says, light industrial establishment involving product assembly, storage, or distribution, but excluding manufacturing when conducted within a completely enclosed building. Does that meet what you're looking for?
Yes, ma'am.
That's a
So-
special exception use?
Say that again?
No, that's a C2 classification, correct?
Yes.
But she's clarifying the use.
No.
Yes.
No?
the C2.
It's a C3 classification. It says special exemption uses. The following uses may be permitted only upon review and specific approval by the Board of Adjustment. That's not what is in front of us, I don't believe. What is in front of us are uses B1 through 23.
If I could clarify,
Please.
what's in front of you is a rezoning application upon which you can put conditions.
Correct.
Okay, you can make those conditions up just from your common sense, or you can pick words from C2, C3, special exceptions, anything you want. It's a rezoning, okay?
So she could make an actual motion to change it and use that verbiage if that's so. if
That
she
verbiage,
so
yes,
chooses.
as long as that verbiage is something commercial. Do you
Okay.
understand what I mean? Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you
Please.
say, look, I want to make a motion to approve the application with the following proviso or condition. And if that's anywhere in the commercial, you could say, you can do that there.
Okay.
Do you understand what I mean? As long
Right.
as it's in that C3 somewhere. Is that in C3? Or even a special exception to C3?
It's a special exception.
To C3,
Yeah.
that would be fine.
So she can make that motion.
You could make that motion. Use those exact words, I guess.
Ms. Smith, would you like to make a motion?
Acceptable, Mr.
I'd like to make a motion.
That would be acceptable to you?
Probably, but I gotta discuss it with the owners.
Can't do. There's a motion here that's calling for provisos. Would you be acceptable to the provisos?
Depending on what they are.
Can you read it again for the
Just read
applicant?
Light industry establishment involving product assembly, storage, or distribution, but excluding manufacturing when conducted within a completely enclosed building. See?
You can live with that, right? Okay, is that your motion?
Okay, I forgot my train of
We'll get
It's all
there,
right.
Claudia.
I make a motion that we approve with the exception of light industry establishment involving product assembly, storage, or distribution, but excluding manufacturing when conducted within a completely enclosed building.
So your
Just
motion
for
is
the
to
record-
allow this.
For the record, the motion was with the exception of this, when I think you meant with the condition.
With a condition.
There you go.
Thank you
Okay.
Yeah,
for the
that
clarification.
changes it.
Yep.
Yes, of course.
May I ask a
Um,
point
Do
of
I have any
order?
discussion?
May I ask a point of order?
Point of order? No.
May I ask a question?
Oh,
You're in a motion here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the midst of a motion.
Yeah, not in the midst of a motion.
Do I have any discussion from the board or a second?
I
How
would
do I-
second.
oh,
it.
You got a motion on the table.
I
The
have a
motion
motion on the
is to
table, right.
allow the rezoning with the following
I've
conditions.
got a question.
Yes,
That's the
sir.
motion on the board.
With this motion, with the light and industry establishment involving product assembly, we're stating that all this activity will be conducted completely within an enclosed building, thereby cutting down the noise to the neighborhood.
You have
can
to,
add that.
can you affirm that?
Is that what you're?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so we would have no outside activity involved with, product assembly.
Correct.
You can do whatever you want, Ms. Breedlove. It's kind of like. you
Well, I'm
don't
just
have to stick
reading
with
what,
those.
what her motion is.
Yeah, you can make the
I'm
motion.
reading her
whatever-
motion.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just clarifying for the benefit of the developer what this means. It means that they're not gonna be putting together anything in the parking lot. They're not gonna be doing anything outside behind the building that would be of a assembly nature. I'm trying to see if we are answering the residents' concern of noise.
Correct.
And safety, that's very important.
Right.
And light industria too. I mean, that way we're not building huge air conditioners outside or it's light industrial. Which it sounds like that's what he has
Well,
in
that's
mind.
a big step away from warehousing.
Yes.
Are you looking for a second?
I am looking for any other comments or a second.
I second.
Okay? I have a second on the motion.
My recommendation before you call the vote
Please.
is to set forth specifically what the motion is.
Please.
That's you. You're the presiding
No.
officer, sir.
No, no.
Because I'm not
I
sure
said
what it
please.
is.
That'd be-
Yeah, you understand what I mean? That's your major job. You have to, the
Yeah,
motion's
I
been
know.
seconded, you have to state what the motion
So-
is, so there's no question when the vote is taken.
The motion on the table is to accept 2C3 with the condition of, can I have the verbiage? Limiting the use to light industry, a light industry establishment involving product assembly, storage or distribution, but excluding the manufacturing as long as it's conducted within a completely enclosed building.
And
So-
I second that.
Okay.
All in
We're
favor?
gonna write that in a resolution in a second. Go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
So
Who-
let the
who-
record show, we have
We'll put in the resolution, is it a 3-2 vote?
3-2?
Put that in the resolution.
Were there two opposing?
There were 2 opposing, there were 3 affirmative.
Okay. Motion
For the
passes.
record, there's Mr. Breedlove and Mr. Stout who opposed, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Motion has passed, sir, yes?
Yes, the motion has passed.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Clifford, sorry. Is there any other discussion for the record? No? Jim?
Can't have any discussion.
Can't have any
I have a
discussion?
motion
Okay.
to just,
Done.
to adjourn?
Can I have a second?
Second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. I understand this is not the